Mark Gonley, founder and artistic director, Chicago Tap Theater, back with another episode of the Tea on Tap today, featuring the young wunderkind Caleb Teicher. While we wait for him, as we do every week, let's listen to our theme song and enjoy the antics of the uber talented Mr. Miles Davis. So good to see everyone here. I always love when I see return guests. Nice to see Mark Goodman here. Happy to see Emily, our intern. It looks like Grace is here. Zoe Lesser, nice to see you. And Caleb is here. Let's do this. So normally when a guest joins us, I immediately reverse the camera on me. However, I'm going to give Caleb a quick chance to say hello to Miles because they are actually old buddies.
Miles, how you doing?
Miles? Who is that?
I know, I cut my hair since you last saw me, but I'm still the same.
I know, I'm not sure he recognizes you.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. I've got a
good.
Tea ready to chat.
Fantastic. I got my coffee going.
Woo.
Yes, I need it. Get me through these long days. So, Caleb, I start all of these the same. I always ask people, would you mind, real quick, tell everybody where you are, and if you wouldn't mind, give everybody a little view of what your space looks like in the moment.
Yeah, it's looking really nice right now, if I may say so myself, because I'm in Harlem. I've lived in New York City for the past 10 years, but I grew up in New York as well. And I've lived in Brooklyn, and I've lived in Manhattan, and most of the time I've lived in Manhattan, I've lived in Harlem. I live on 141st, I won't be more specific than that. And I have...
That's probably enough.
And my home is getting a lot of natural light these days, so I'm not going to move my phone because I'm a little concerned about service, but I'll just flip my camera. You can see my little living room space, which is looking so cute with plants and a big window, a record player and a keyboard. Nice bookcase. It is actually very, very peaceful here right now. I can't tap dance in my apartment, which is really the only downside. I'm on the 4th floor of a big apartment building. I think it's like 18 floors and like 20 units per floor. It's actually, so it's the housing project that was built over where the Savoy Ballroom used to stand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you have a little piece of history there.
I do. But what that means essentially is that there are people everywhere in the general vicinity. I put my metal tap shoes on in my apartment once, and it was an absolute nightmare. I thought it was enough for like immediate eviction in my mind. So, like, it was so loud. I looked pained the entire time.
Oh no!
I did one take I had to do for a video, and then I said that's it. I can't do it ever again.
So needless to say, the 2-minute tap lesson today will either be a verbal lesson or done in soft shoe.
Either or both, yes.
Love it. The other thing I usually like to ask before we get into the questions is, can you share your mug with us?
Yes. So lots of fun stories. So I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. I couldn't tell you why. I guess it tastes good. And I have this little teapot that I bought for like $10 from Bed Bath & Beyond. And then, more interesting, I have these mugs that my friend Rachel made in Asheville. Rachel Feast made these. And I was staying on her couch, and she had a couple on the wall. And I said, can I buy this from you? And she said, yeah, it's like $20. And that was it.
I love it. It's beautiful.
It's my favorite mug, and I think about my friend every time.
Aw, that's the best.
Yeah, swing dance friend, actually.
Aw. Fun fact, when I interviewed Sarah, I was actually using a mug that she had given me, I think, 18 years ago. And I
Yeah.
don't think she realized that she had given it to me until the very end. And I never
Oh, wow.
explicitly stated, oh, this is the mug from you. I think because I kind of wanted to enjoy letting her
Yeah, yeah.
go through that journey of realizing the genesis of it. Because she complimented me on it. She's like, oh, I really like that mug. I was like, yes,
You're
me
like,
too.
yeah, a friend gave it to me.
It's very meaningful to me. So tell us about your first experience with tap dance. What's the first time you really remember either seeing it or engaging with it in some way?
Um, I started as a drummer, so that's a great question. Probably I first knew tap dance existed the way we all did, probably from some movie musical. My first time really seeing tap dance and registering it as a thing and a thing I wanted to learn how to do, I was 10 years old and I was watching some sort of Star Search television show. Um, I don't even know who was on the show,
Hmm.
but I remember going into the kitchen and saying to my mom, I know you've tried to put me in dance class before, and I've always resisted for a number of reasons, but maybe I'll try tap dancing. And she said the reason I resisted was the demographic of people taking dance class in suburban America is, you know, thousands of small girls in pink tutus, and then like at the time this was pre Sadie You Can Dance, this is pre Glee, this is pre a lot of the things that sort of normalized uh,
Hmm.
men in dance or boys in dance. So I was just a very timid child. I was very timid. So we made an agreement that if we could find a tap class that had one other boy in it, then I would sign up for it. And we found better than that. We actually found an entire. It was called a boys beginner tap class, meaning that everyone in the class was male identifying, and it just allowed us all to feel more comfortable because we weren't gonna get bullied, and we wouldn't feel different from everyone else, and we wouldn't feel like we didn't belong. So we were a very motley crew. That class was started by a woman named Jennifer Dell, and she still runs a dance studio in Bedford Hills, New York, and she is a big proponent of boys and dance and does a lot of initiatives to make sure that boys get into dance class. Once they're in, then they feel comfortable. But it's really kind of the whatever your gateway experience is that kind of decides whether or not you'll stick with it.
Without a doubt. I used to teach a young gentleman named CJ Salvador, who's gone on to have a really great
I
career.
I grew up with
Um,
CJ too. Yeah,
of course, through Tap Kids.
Tap
You know,
kids.
his mother felt the same kind of pang of wishing that there were kind of more avenues for boys to dance or more things that supported boys who dance. And for a while, she had a clothing line. And there were beanies and there were shirts, and they all said, "Who says boys don't dance?" In a
Oh,
very early 2000s SEZ for says, because that was cool. But I thought it was so great. I still have a few pieces of that merchandise, and every now and then, if I have a boy that I'm teaching who really loves tap and is working his butt off, every now and then I'll pull one out and give it to him.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
I
think I have
mean,
about 15 left.
now I really reject the idea that we need to gender childhood
Sure.
activities at all or gender anything at all. I'm like, why do we need to
Yep.
separate boys and girls? It makes no sense. At the same time, I totally understand that, like, knowing that there are other people, and this is actually a sort of overreaching lesson. Knowing that you're not the only person that looks like you in any room is going
Yes.
to make you feel comfortable.
Most certainly.
When we have conversations about demographics in dance, we're almost just talking about, well, is there more than one of this type of person in any room?
Hmm.
Strength in numbers, comfort in numbers.
Yeah. Representation matters. It really does. It helps.
Absolutely.
Visibility. Um, who were your other primary teachers? What is your lineage? And I'm always curious if you know who are your teachers' teachers? Who are your
Yeah.
grand teachers?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to trace. So Jennifer Dell was my first tap teacher, and she came from the sort of, I guess you could call it musical theater or commercial dance world. The when I was, a young male dancer, the people she was trying to get me to eye were Mike Minery and Gil Stroming, Chris Irk, and like the break the floor cool guys in the early 2000s doing tap dance. crew, right?
Yep.
And so I was really into that at first. And then I ended up moving teachers. I met David Ryder. I don't know if you ever met David Ryder. He was an
I would.
exceptional teacher. He taught in upstate New York, and upstate New York was I didn't realize kind of a major place for tap dance for a couple of different reasons. One, you could say the proximity to New York City, and that a lot of
Hmm.
people who lived in New York City would travel upstate to teach. But also, it's because Brenda Buffalino lived
Uh,
upstate. So David's teacher was Brenda Buffalino, and there were a number of other teachers in that area at the time. Michelle Ribble, who recently passed away, taught a lot of
hmm.
students up there. Kendrick Jones taught up there, and David
Hmm.
had this studio, and it was a pretty powerful little scene up there of the people that. So David only taught private lessons for a number of reasons. He would teach like 12 hours a day on Saturday and 12 hours a day on Sunday. He was a college student at the time. He was like 24 and he was paying for college by teaching private lessons on the weekends.
Mm.
And it was just one student back to back. So he maybe had 20 students total in a year. But Warren Crafts, who's in endurance dance and is
Oh
a
yeah.
remarkable dancer, Byron Tittle, who's in endurance dance, remarkable dancer, Caitlin Frank, who's on the Newsies tour and teaches at BDC. A lot of young dancers in that area went on to continue pursuing tap dance as a vocation.
What a cool legacy. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Is there anything that a mentor had said to you that still resonates that you hear in the back of your mind when you go to teach or perform?
Uh, yeah, sure. Two of them, I'll say. One is very pragmatic. One, I remember David saying, when you teach, just think about all of the teachers that you've really enjoyed taking class from and be
Mm.
some version of all of them. And so when I think about when I do teach tap dance, I think, okay, I want to be a bit like David Ryder. I want to be a bit like Derek Grant, if at all possible. I want to be a bit like my earth science teacher, Bruce Peterson, in 8th grade. I want to be like my first drum teacher, Ellen Alexander. And so I try to make some sort of Frankenstein monster of their various qualities and approaches and perspectives. And so that's the first thing. The second thing that really resonates is kind of a more philosophical or human side of things. David, who was my major inspiration, I would consider him my mentor growing up. And he actually closed down his studio and stopped tap dancing and became a Catholic priest.
Wow.
I know. I'm just taking a moment to let that
Amazing.
resonate. Yes, but
Wow.
as you can imagine, I idolized this person. I thought that if I were to be him, I would be happy and I would be fulfilled. And he was taking the thing that I cared most about and I thought he cared most about and just completely tossing it aside.
Wow.
Um, in search of a different uh, lifestyle. And he said to me, Caleb, if you decide to stop tap dancing tomorrow, that's okay. And I thought about that for a really long time. And I now have come to understand that what he means is what we learn about ourselves, what we learn about the world, and what we learn from the dance. If that doesn't end up remaining our primary objective or our primary vocation, all of those things still live within us. I think that really actually kind of I understood what he meant when he said that when I saw social swing dancing for the first time. And I realized that you could be a dancer. You could be a dancer in your heart and your mind and your body and your practice without making money from it, without having a career as a dancer. You could live being a dancer without having to be a quote dancer, a professional dancer, a working dancer. So it's weird to think that probably the most inspirational thing that my mentor said to me is you don't ever have to be a dancer. You just know that. But it does give me a lot of reassurance because I think about the many ways that we continue to be dancers when we're not dancers, when we're talking to people and the way it changes the way that we see the world. So I think about that a lot. I'm still a dancer for the record. Like I still love dancing,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
go back to that a lot.
I love that. Well, and it's nice to kind of remember that we are more than just the sum of what we do or what we love, that there's a deeper thing going on there.
Yeah.
I'm going to be thinking about that too. Victor just commented, said, I'm going to need to
Oh,
think
hey
on that
Victor.
one more. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that.
it's weird to think that probably my one of my biggest inspirations as a dancer told me, and you don't have to be a dancer. I'm about to not be a dancer. But
Wow.
it really hit hard at the time, and then I've come to think on it a lot more, and I completely understand.
Yeah. That means that also somewhere there are is that their priest is probably a brilliant artist. Oh no, I lost Caleb. We're having technical difficulties. I'm sure he's gonna join us again right away. Wow, what a fascinating, that's just the first 15 minutes. What a great beginning to this interview. I knew that this was gonna be a really edifying, engaging conversation, and boy, am I not disappointed.
I
Hey,
don't know what happens. I am just
it's all
sitting here
right.
staring, and it says thanks for joining the, and I whatever. Anyway, yes, it's a fascinating thing. And for the record, he is a
Yeah.
priest. He is a parish on Staten Island, and apparently he's a
Wow.
phenomenal priest.
Oh, I'm sure.
Wouldn't
I'm sure.
wouldn't
If
you
you're
hope if you were a church-going person that your priest were also a tap dancer, a very good tap dancer?
without a doubt, I would want nothing less. So when you first kind of started taking tap and it started to really resonate in a way that maybe let you know that this is going to be more than something we're just kind of doing, weekly classes. What was it about tap dance that really drew you in? What is it that really ignited that passion?
Uh, that's a great question. There wasn't a light switch moment that some people describe. I've heard people describe this. They went to see a performance of a musical and they say, and that's when I knew I wanted to be on Broadway. That's when I knew I wanted to do that. I never had a sort of eureka moment like that. I just, I was a kid who was interested in a lot of things. I'm a bit I just kind of meditate on things. I kind of muse on things. I kind of just like to dig deeper on things. But I had never found something before tap dance that the further I dug, the more beautiful and fascinating and interesting and weird and the more possessed I seemed to be of it. And it also was the type of thing that I did compulsively, which I think we often think about compulsion as a negative concept, but meaning I was always thinking about tap dance even when I didn't have my shoes on. It was the first sort of obsession I had that I could think about as a sort of rolling background activity. I talk about this. You see a lot of tap dancers, and I see myself do this, and I actually see some of my students do this now, where they're always sort of practicing. You're having a conversation with them, and they're multitasking. You're talking to them about their lunch, or you're talking to them about some
Mhm.
movie, and you see them. Some people tap with their fingers, some people click with their teeth, some people don't need to have any small physical manifestation. But for me, I was always thinking about tap dance, about combinations, about rhythm, about certain ideas in the background of everything I was doing. And it allowed me actually, it's a weird sort of tip. I was always practicing without my shoes on. And then I was practicing with my shoes on. But the majority of my practicing was without my shoes on. It was me sitting somewhere and talking to someone, but also thinking about the combination I learned in class last week and rolling it over in my mind over and over again. Do you have that? Do you have that experience?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, it's either rhythms going on in the head or kind of playing games. I'm often trying to like find how fast I can hit the second two notes of the triplet without the first note, like a bebop drummer. Just little things, right? Or the
Just
feet
a
moving.
moment. Someone said, I'm a teeth clicker. I had no idea there were more of us. Yes, I'm also, meaning well, also, it actually comes
I love
from,
it.
I just want to meditate on this a little bit longer
Yes,
because
please
it's a weird
do.
thing. And a lot of people have said, oh man, like you do that too. Um, so when I was learning drums, the way that you manifest rhythm with drums is you have two sticks, right? And
Mhm.
and you have, if you're at a kit, your feet. But let's say you're playing on the snare drum. Your options are right, left, or both. right? Those are the only options. It's a binary experience. So when I learned tap dance, before I even thought about what part of my foot I was using, I was just thinking, is this sound being made with my right foot or my left foot or both at the same time? And it's sort of me mathing out the wow, another teeth clicker. I think I'm waiting for the academic study about teeth clickers. Um, and potentially whatever jaw tension we end up with. But so that was my thing. I was always thinking, am I making sound with my right foot or my left foot or with both? And then beyond that, also, if I'm making sound with my right foot, am I standing on my right foot or am I standing on my left foot? Because there is sound in tap dance that you make with your right foot while you're standing on your right foot. And then there's also
Yes.
sound that you make with your right foot while you're standing on your left foot, or you're standing
Yes.
on your left feet. Anyway, uh, so many teeth clickers coming out of the woodwork. Wow. What a sample set of humanity on here right now.
I had no idea. I have to admit, I tend to do mine either in my fingers or my feet, so I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that who knew?
Yeah.
I wonder how your dentists feel about that. It's not
My
damaging, I hope.
so I take piano lessons and I see my piano teacher as I talk to him just doing
Mm,
this all the time.
yep, I
It's a
love
it's a
it.
thing. Compulsive
Yeah,
compulsive practicers or practicers is not a word. You know what I mean?
I like that word. Well, we can make it a word.
Sure.
My friend in Germany would always ask me, "Oh, are you rehearsaling today?" And I always thought that that was so charming. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
rehearsaling
rehearsaling."
is excellent.
Yeah, I like that. So tell me this, because this kind of ties in with what we're talking about, the idea of practice and technique. You know, I love the word technique, and I find it so fascinating because I feel like in tap we have a little more room to kind of define technique in maybe a broader, different way than I find maybe in the ballet or modern world, where they already kind of have preset terms, right? They've already defined certain techniques.
Hmm.
Um, Tap, I don't know other, certainly there's many people that I would say they're practitioners of like loose ankle technique or hip based technique. But even so, a lot of people expand technique to include way more than just how we do the steps. What does technique mean to you, and how do you define that in your own head, or if you were going to
Yeah,
talk to a student?
that's a great question, mostly because my perspective on what technique actually is really changed over time. I At first I wasn't thinking about I knew technique meant that you were able to do things, right? Technique means that you are capable of doing things. And then it got to a point where I could basically achieve all the things that were being asked of me, but that didn't mean I had good technique, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my first hurdle with technique was, can I do this? Yes, I can do this. In the words of Rachel on Friends when she takes a tap class, you click when they click. If you click when they click, you have technique, right? So that was my first experience with technique. Then beyond that, I started thinking about how efficiently my sort of second phase with technique was with how much effort am I making the click when other people click? And that actually that epiphany happens for me in Michelle Dorance's class when she introduced loose ankle technique and Sam Weber as a deity for what I would say. I was completely unfamiliar with that, and I had no idea. I hadn't really thought about the sort of um, the pedagogy or the way in which I was making sound. I was just making sound, and if it sounded good, I was using the oral
Sure.
feedback to say this is working, right? So second phase of technique was how efficiently am I making this sounds. Then beyond that, I started to think about quality of feel for me personally, and then quality of experience for other people watching. That was sort of my third experience with
Mm,
technique. Technique is a way of manifesting an expressive idea. How clearly, if you want to be really quiet or really loud or really large or really small with the step, can you do that? Is the
yeah.
technique of, are you capable of actually pulling at the step in the way that you want it to, or is it just kind of, are you just kind of doing it to achieve it? The final arc that I'm sort of on now is where is this coming from physically, anatomically in my body? My experience in jazz dance and swing dance has completely changed the way I think about my tap dancing.
Ooh, tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, mostly, I I think a lot of tap dance, the big difference for me between tap dancers of yore, yore, and tap dancers of the present day is that we have traded off a lot of hip mobility and hip movements and initiation from the center in and we got in return a kind of enhanced articulation of of our lower leg movements, right? Meaning we're dancing faster, and when we're dancing faster, we're moving our hips less. When you watch early tap dance footage where people aren't trying to shove as many steps in, then they actually have a capacity to move their body more. But when you get to a place where you're running triplets or 16th notes, or you're really going for really complex weight changes, you actually don't have as much freedom in your hips. So particularly as a follower in swing dance, everything is sort of a spiraling, like gyrokinesis style reaction through the body. The body is a machine, but the body as a machine that's full of coils and spirals and, spinal connection and things like that, as opposed to the body is just like your hip goes to your knee bone goes to your, like, and it's like, it's like a little punch or something. That doesn't work for me, but the idea that I initiate something from my center and it manifests in some very cyclical, circular, very complex way through my leg, and that produces sound, that has made me think a lot about that. It also has made me think about how I move through space. Like, you move through space in lines, but you also move through space in, lines have curves, and how do you get there, and where is your momentum? No one had really had a conversation with me about momentum in tap dance until I started swing dancing and said, wait, all these ideas of momentum should apply to my solo dancing. And so I've spent the better part of the past few years spending a lot of time on that. That was
that
really
sounds
long
fascinating.
preach. My apologies, but
No, I like the exploring the concept of momentum within tap dance. I will. You offer that class on Zoom, I will be there, Mr. Caleb. I would love to experience that. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I credit Nathan Bew, a little mini spoken lesson here. Nathan Bew is my most frequent swing dance partner and has opened my mind to so many things within dancing, within jazz dancing. If we think about tap dance as a jazz dance tradition, he's expanded my mind as a jazz dancer. Nathan was talking about how, of course we make multiple steps, but we don't make them along a line, but we want to move along the line. And so I always think about, do you remember scatter plots from school?
Oh gosh, no.
Scatter plots is like an AP statistics thing. I took AP statistics. I couldn't tell you why, but essentially it's a graph, and there are a bunch of data points, and they're on the graph, and they're all over the place. But then when you look at all the points from afar, you see that there's usually a trend. It's kind of like looking at the stars in the sky and seeing a constellation, but instead of drawing straight lines from star to star, you just kind of see like a mass movement. And so I've come to understand that is what footwork is in Lindy Hop. Like, your body is moving this way, and your steps are part of that momentum. Like, momentum is this, and then your steps are all here, but you're just moving generally this way. And that really changed the way I thought of tap dance, as opposed to like, this step goes this way, this step goes this way, shuffle, shuffle steps. Like, every step having its own momentum. It's just like it sort of flies by. Did that make any sense?
That makes all the sense. That is, again, I have to say, you're giving me a lot to think about. I love it. This is everything I want out of an interview. So thank you. Yes, I'm going to drink a sip of coffee to that. So tell me, you're relatively young. I think you might be the youngest dancer I've interviewed yet for this. And one of the things I'm curious about, have you had, I'm knocking on wood that you have not, Have you had to deal with an injury yet as a tap dancer or a Lindy dancer, swing dancer?
No, no, I've been super
That's
fortunate.
great.
Um,
Yeah.
I've just been super fortunate. I'm also young. I think
Yeah.
I'm sure I've definitely hit my knee on some things, and I've definitely fallen and things like that. But usually, if I take some time to rest, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, it's fine.
Yeah, I remember those days. I don't think I had my real like injury until my like mid 30s. So I
Hmm.
think and hopefully, you don't even have to experience that. So well
Yeah.
that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. Um how has and this is an interesting question, I think, for a native New Yorker. I'm kind of interested as well in lineage affecting how we dance. I'm also interested in regionality. Um, and I wonder when you're from the state of New York and have spent so much time in the city of New York, uh, I wonder if I'm sure it still applies, but I guess I'm interested in how. How do you think where you are from has impacted either your approach to the dance itself or maybe how you think about it? I wonder if maybe
Mm.
being in New York, you view the possibilities differently because you are so close to such opportunity.
Completely. The first thing I'd say about that is tap dancers, jazz dancers, dancers of all stripes, but particularly in the jazz lineage, are really susceptible to geographical privilege. I am a good tap dancer because I grew up within the vicinity of New York City, and tap dance has an epicenter. It has many epicenters, but New York City is
New York
is the
is, yeah.
original, and it's still a very powerful one. And so, growing up, not only was I able to go into the city to get information, but also a lot of information came out of the city. We're not just talking about kind of the big names in tap dance, the Derek Grants and Dormisha Sumbry Edwards and Michelle Dorrance, who I was able to study with as a young person. But we're also talking about the people that studied with those people and now how those people spent time outside the city. It's very common for tap dancers in New York City now. You move to New York City, and if you're trying to make ends meet as a tap dancer in New York, you will get a job teaching at a dance studio in the tri-state area, whether it be in suburban New Jersey or New York or Connecticut. And I received the benefit of that sort of trend by being close enough to the city to access it as a primary source, but also experience it as a secondary source where I grew up.
Mm.
Not to mention also Brenda setting roots in upstate New York, and there sort of being a really nice cultural scene up there allowed that. Um, but similarly, I mean, David, my teacher, going back, he was still taking class in New York City. So he was a student at Fordham undergrad when he was teaching. And so he would go take Idella Castell's class and Derek Grant's class and Michelle Dorrance's class. And then that would be rolling around in his mind as he went upstate to teach us on the weekends. So sometimes I actually got true, and it wasn't super frequent, but sometimes he would say, hey, I learned this in Jason Samuel Smith's class last month, and I really feel like you should know it. He tried not to do that because it's a little displaced, but he would mostly
Sure.
say, Jason was just speaking about this, and tap dancers in New York City are speaking about this. So I was super fortunate just to be in a sort of a trickle down suburban area of New York where we got a lot of information.
Wow.
And also, like I didn't have to like fly anywhere to learn about tap dance. In fact, like there's this sort of thing now, which is sort of mind-boggling that young tap dancers fly to festivals, right?
Mhm.
Like people
Oh,
fly
I
to DC
did.
Tap Fest or
Yeah,
LA
when I
Tap
was
Fest and things
16.
like that.
Yeah.
But I was super fortunate. Like I went to Tap City, the New York City Tap Festival, and I went to Tap Kids as a kid, but I slept in my own bed at the end of the day
Wow.
because
Yeah, that's
we
unique.
would get up super early, drive, the 2 hours or what have you to New York, traffic permitting, and I would take class all day, and then I would miss all the events at night, but it didn't matter because I had just taken 4 tap classes, and then we would drive home, and I'd be exhausted, and I wake up the next morning. But it
Uh,
just with geographic privilege comes some sort of financial privilege as well. Because I was so
mhm.
close, I didn't have to spend the money that other people do when they live in Wisconsin. Well, actually, Wisconsin has a tap festival, but like they live somewhere where there is no tap festival and they have to fly to the tap festival, that's an incredibly expensive venture.
Yep, most
Anyway,
certainly. And if you don't have the capacity to afford to go, then you don't get the benefit of it,
it's
without a
very
doubt.
sad. Learning to dance is a very expensive, learning to dance well, learning to
Yes.
dance well is a very expensive experience.
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this period with all of the online content being created and shared.
Hmm.
I'm interested to see if that has a democratizing effect in any way, as far as, people being able to access, archived classes from 2020, in 2040, they'll be able to go
I
back and,
I think it's quite likely. It's a bit harder for swing dance because it's a partnered dance, but I
yeah.
think there are a lot of people who have been wanting to take dance class with a lot of people who are very far away from them geographically,
Yeah.
and suddenly they're in their basement in North Carolina and they're taking class from Michelle Dorrance. I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's very cool. Um, So I'm going to talk for a minute about, since I know that you are very modest, I'm going to brag for you and tell you about the first time that I saw you dance.
Great.
Chicago Tap Theater, we were invited to be a part of a show in New York called Stampede. It was an annual show. It was kind of a collection of all rhythmic dances, I would say rhythmic dance companies or artists that are devoted to percussive and rhythmic dance. And I remember it was a great show. Dorrance Dance was in it. The Darakar Dance, which they are the organizers of it, and lovely, lovely people. And then there was this young dancer I hadn't heard of yet, because of course I'm in Chicago, and he comes out, and I think you did a solo first, and I remember being like, there was a performance quality that I think was immediately arresting. It was incredibly engaging, and it was if I remember right, it was your solo that it had this kind of affected nonchalance with the performance quality, but it was done with such a precision, and I mean, it was just really something, right? It immediately grabbed us, and then you and your dancers came out and did. Among other things, you did the piece that eventually I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn that piece, which was the skating to Vince Guaraldi. I immediately turned to my rehearsal director for my company that was sitting next to me, and I was like, we've got to work with that guy. I don't care what we have to do, but we've got to talk to him. And then I met you and found out how young you were, and I was both incredibly impressed and excited and very, very angry. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't really angry, but I was blown away because I believe you were maybe 18.
I was 18.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and you were dancing with and choreographing with the maturity and wisdom of somebody far beyond your years. So I'm kind of curious, what allowed you to dance with such authority and I would say maturity at such a young age? What experiences led you there? That's a
Um,
hard question to answer, right? I get
I
that,
no,
but still.
I was gonna start with saying, oh, probably arrogance, and the two,
Sure, arrogance of youth.
yeah, arrogance and ignorance make hubris, which makes you unaware when you are just not as good at something, but you do it anyway. Um, no, I, I don't. I mean, it's a great question. Thank you for your kind words, and also I should
One,
say that I'm not trying to turn this to a mutual appreciation society thing, but Chicago Tap Theater was the first company that ever asked me to make a work. Everything that I had made prior was because I wanted to make something and that I decided to manifest it. And Chicago Tap Theater has a model where they can bring in outside choreographers, which is really rare, not unheard of, but rare
yeah.
in tap dance, and that's a very normal thing in other dance forms to hire outside choreographers for a commission. Anyway, but that was a really
Well, thank you.
powerful
That's kind.
experience, a really powerful experience for me because I was even by the time I came to Chicago Tap Theater to set it work, I was still young. I think I was 19.
You
Um,
were.
maybe I was 20. I don't know. But it was a really profound experience. I would say actually the only thing that maybe made that piece you saw at 18 decent or the work felt like it was mature is mostly because I had been choreographing at that point for 8 years. And if you're doing the math, I started tap dancing at 10 and I started
Wow.
choreographing at 10.
That's great.
Um, you know,
That's
oh yeah,
cool.
Lady Hofer's also commissioned me for work. This is a
Yay.
really powerful way to support the growth and artistic development of tap dancers and people who make work with tap dance. It's not as common as like every every major every major dance company in the contemporary dance and ballet scene commissions a couple choreographers a year, and it's just not as frequent in tap dance. Anyway, how did I get there? Oh yeah, so I remember 6 months into taking tap class, I had made my first solo for myself, and
Wow.
not because I had ambitions of being a choreographer, but just because it was a way for me to turn over the information I was learning and
Hmm.
and to learn what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, and start finding a voice. But I wasn't trying to do things. Oh yeah, district tap and capital tap. Man, so much love sliding into these comments.
Look at that.
Yeah, so I remember I made my first solo my first year of tap dance. It wasn't good, but that's fine. And then
But it was yours.
yeah, and I made a number of solos for myself each year, not because I wanted to present them or because I thought anyone wanted to see them, just because it kept me busy. And then I
Hmm.
started making group pieces. I remember when I was maybe 15, I got hired by a local dance studio. Um, your screen is loading. I wonder if my screen is loading.
Your screen's loading, but I hear your voice clear as a
Oh,
bell.
amazing. Cool. Okay, we're back. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I got hired by a local dance studio, Seven Stars Performing Arts Center, to choreograph on one of their competition groups, a quartet,
Hmm.
and I was so stoked. Also, they were really good dancers. In fact, Brittany
That's
DeStefano, who was part of that quartet, ended up dancing with my company forever, basically for the
cool.
entire time. Hey, Conrad!
Hmm.
Wow, so many friends in this. Yeah, so I guess I keep getting sidetracked because people say nice things in the comments. Um, in short, the reason that my choreography at 18 was okay is because I had been choreographing steadily, not because anyone wanted me to, but just because I had been in the practice of it for
Yeah,
8 years.
that's great. Yeah.
And there's nothing like time that
Hmm.
to make you better at something. Of course, there are ways to get better faster.
Sure.
But a lot of it's just kind of slogging through and getting
Hmm.
better mistake after mistake.
Love it. One of the things that's very unique with you and as an artist and your place within the dance community is you kind of live equally comfortably within both the tap world and the Lindy swing world. How did those twin passions develop, and how do you find those two art forms both overlap, and then how do they diverge?
Uh, yeah, great question. I want to say just to be timid that I don't know if I actually have a secure place in the Lindy swing or jazz dance worlds. I just love it. I really love it. It's it gives me so much joy, and it has been the place where I feel like I am learning most right now. When I go to teach at tap festivals now, I still take class and I still get so much from that. But when I go to a swing dance event and sometimes I'm teaching and sometimes I'm not, I'm like my brain explodes. There's just so much information out there, and there's so much to explore there that really works for me. So I think I'm probably in the tap dance world now because I've been in the tap dance world for a really long time, and I'm probably in the Lindy swing world now because it's where I feel like I'm getting my second education. Um, but in terms of, I don't know, I've always I just like a bunch of different things, and I am super privileged that no one ever told me that I had to be one thing or another. You know, I that's actually not true. I think some people said, you really should. I do remember people saying, tap dance is your strong suit. You should stick to tap dance. It's great that you like jazz, but stick to this. Or, you know, if you start a company and you're doing tap dance, but you're also doing other things, it'll send mixed messages. You know, what is your brand? What is all this stuff? And I hear that, but I heard it and understood the sort of concerns, and then I just did what I wanted anyway. And
Yes.
essentially, all the dancing I do is just the dancing I want to do. So it's not super calculated in any way. I'm
Hmm.
interested in tap dance because I'm interested in tap dance. I'm interested in Lindy Hop and jazz because I'm interested in those things, and then I'm interested in other things when I'm interested in them. It's you know we're all very complex beings, and I think we are only as narrow as we choose to make ourselves.
Mm, nicely said. So you have danced with some groundbreaking companies over the years. You've worked with Dorrance Dance, you worked with the Bang Group, and many others. How did your experiences with those companies impact your own work, and how did it influence the decision to start your own company?
Uh, yeah, great question. Um, I am in
Thank you.
I am in debt. You know, if anyone likes my work, or to make it more global, if anyone likes anything that anyone's ever done, it is because of the shoulders that we stand on.
Yes.
Period. And not even the shoulders that we stand on, but the shoulders that are on either side of us. You know, like it is not so linear. These ideas of evolution and progress and innovation, it's a series of it's like a lap pool, and it's like the water is behind you, and then the water is also around you.
Mm.
And what a weird metaphor. I'll try again later.
I like that metaphor. I was going along
You know what I
with
mean?
you.
It's like it's all everywhere. So I guess what I mean to say is that dancing for Dorrance Dance and dancing for the Bang Group was really life changing in so many ways, and just gave me the time to cultivate myself as an artist. I think a lot of what young tap dancers are lacking for is opportunity to hone their crafts. I had the opportunity to be really bad in performance a lot,
Mm.
and that's how I got better at being a performer. In the same way that I had a lot of time to hone myself as a choreographer, which is why I'm a better choreographer now. And so I'm really grateful, honestly, for the work that Michelle and David and Chase Brock, and even like one of my first performance jobs in New York was dancing for Cartier Williams, and we rehearsed for months.
Mm.
And that was a class in itself. I think I just tried to work a lot and do my best to kind of pair myself with people that I really admired, and
Yeah.
I it never felt like I don't know, it never felt like I was trying to specifically get anything from anyone, but it all just sort of becomes part of you. I spent
Yeah.
on and off maybe 6 years dancing with Dorrance Dance, and probably maybe 3 years with the Bang Group, and lots of other time with lots of other scenarios. And every experience you have, it contributes to your soup that you're making, right? And even if you want to leave it out of your soup, you usually can't. Like your soup is being made whether you intentionally do so or not. Um, but I going back though, I mean, I think Michelle deserves so much credit because moving to New York, there were no dance companies to join. Um, uh, that's maybe a blanket statement. That's not fair, but I guess actually what I should say is that when I moved to New York, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'll probably join a concert dance company.
Right.
I
Yeah.
I I just thought I was going to be a dancer, and that was the model, that was the avenue that opened up in my first couple of years in New York. And if it had not opened up, I don't think I would be the dancer I am, and I also don't think I would understand the possibilities of what's available to someone who has interest in being a dancer. I probably would like be in musical theater or something because I knew that Broadway was an actual thing you could do, but I didn't know that
Right.
there were other things.
So this delves directly into my next question, which is, tell me about your company. What is the guiding vision behind it? If what is kind of the mission statement, or what are you interested in exploring the most or saying with the work that your company does?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you have a dance company, particularly if you end up registering as a nonprofit, which we technically are not, but we are fiscally sponsored, blah blah blah. they're
Yep.
always looking for a mission statement, right? All nonprofit organizations have a mission statement. And so it's like, in 2 sentences, how do you describe what your company is doing? And I've struggled with this forever because I'm like, I don't know, we're just kind of doing whatever, man. Like we're just kind of making it up as we go along. Isn't that the point of art?
Right.
But recently I've sort of narrowed down maybe what we have done, not what we mean to do, but what we have done. What we have done is we've made new works based on American culture, and that could be historically driven American culture, meaning recordings of Ella Fitzgerald and Lindy Hop in a kind of more straight ahead notion, or it could be a newer thing, meaning beatboxing, which is a more modern American innovation, and tap dancing, and also, like, for a while I wanted to say, like, it is a decidedly jazz dance company, but also I've also realized that we spend too much time doing clogging and flat footing and percussive dancing that is related to clogging and flat footing to call us a jazz dance company, because no jazz dance company would do as much clogging and flat footing as my company does. And we don't even mean to call it anything in particular. We're always trying to respect the lineage, but we're also trying to say, but this is a new thing, and every time someone dances, it's a new thing. And we are not the inventors of it. We're just embodying it. So the company makes new things based on American ideas and ideals and history, past and present, and it really has an emphasis on collaboration between dancers, between artistic voices, and usually between dance and music.
Sounds like you have your mission statement now.
Yeah. On the flip side, my funny answer would be, like, our mission statement is to seek out new life and civilizations, to bravely go where no one's gone before.
I love it. Yes.
That's what it feels like. Like that's like in my heart of hearts, like that's what I want it to feel like. Like we're really discovering new things. Nothing's new, but we're trying as much as, if at all possible, we're trying to make new things. Almost impossible to make a new thing, but if one can make a new thing, we're trying it.
Love it. I know, so just, we have 2 more questions, and then we're going to take about a 30-second pause because Instagram has an hour-long limit. So if we happen to disappear, everybody, we will come right back because we do have a few more things to do. But I'm hoping to get through these 2 questions, and then we'll take a pause, come back, do the 2-minute tap class and the rapid riffs. So I know that you've become known for your deep musical collaborations with musical artists. You've been very lucky to work with some very established musical artists like Ben Folds and Regina Spektor. How did this specific approach to creation grab you, this collaborative with musicians? And what have you learned about collaborating with musical artists as a dancer?
Yeah, great question. I think musical collaboration became all the dance traditions I'm most interested in, specifically tap dance and Lindy Hop and jazz, are all musically driven dance forms. And tap dance most specifically, which is my first love and my first preoccupation, makes sounds. So whether or not you see yourself as a contributing musician to a musical idea, you are. Whether or not you think that the sound you're making matters, it matters because it's contributing to the musical landscape. So I think I just wanted my dancing that sounds nice with the music. And actually, I mean, when I look back at kind of what I've learned over the past 10 years is mostly, I feel like, of course, I've learned a lot about style and aesthetic and pedagogy and how to move my body, but I also think that my dancing probably sounds better, and I like my musical choices better now. I'm less tempted to fill in all the space because we don't like music that's like that. And I've learned to really not like dancing that is too dense, because it, and not just because that's what appeals to my ear. That is what appeals to my ear, but it's also, it gives people who are listening space to hear what you say before you say something else. And what I admire about Ben and Regina and a lot of the musicians I've worked with is they are really interested in communicating, and allowing people time to be communicated to. Um, uh, Regina and Ben, being on stage with them, they have such a good sense of, I guess, what comedians or actors would call timing.
Mm-hmm.
But and it also feels as though, when they're singing or speaking, it feels like they understand that the words matter. Um, and so I've tried to take that into my dancing. Every movement could matter. It doesn't have to, but if every movement does matter, it could be all that more impactful. Did that answer the question? I can't remember what the question was.
Whatever the question was, that answered it. I love it. So last year was a big one for you. You premiered on Broadway. You landed some pretty big tour dates with your company, and you appeared on the cover of Dance Magazine. This is one of those questions I think people hate to get. What next? What's coming up? Obviously, a lot of things have been canceled in the short term for every artist
I mean, like,
on the
what's
entire
next? I'll be
planet.
sitting on my couch and
Yeah, I know, right?
well, no, actually, I have a good answer here. What next? Well, I think the thing that a couple things. In terms of what I'm doing in quarantine, I'm reading a lot. In my mind, I'm
What
the
are you
type of
reading?
person, gosh, right now, I'm reading a book called How to Be Idle, A Loafer's Manifesto, which is about essentially how doing nothing resists capitalism and labor as an
Love it.
innately positive concept. Um,
Yes.
but before that, I've read like 9 books in the past couple months or something like that, and I always see myself as as the type of person who reads a lot, but it doesn't
Mhm.
always actually happen because I'm busy doing whatever else I'm doing. So I'm really taking this time to read. I'm also I'm in the thick of a pretty serious jazz piano study, and I've been able to keep
Mm.
up on my piano lessons with my teacher over Zoom. And so I practice about 2 hours every day now,
Awesome.
with kind of the interest in really feeling. And this is a very bold idea, feeling as comfortable as a musician as I do as a dancer.
Yes.
Which,
Love it.
like, that's probably like 10 years away. But I've got time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I'm doing right now. In terms of what's next, I think for me, like, it was a big year for me, but it was also a big year for the sort of community of people that I've surrounded myself with.
Mhm.
Um, and that brings me the greatest joy, like sort of
Yeah.
the tribe that I've set up with CT and Co. And like having personal success does not move me nearly as much as having community success or group success. Um,
Yeah.
I think I just I just want to share everything that I'm doing with other people. I resist doing solo work at as much as possible because I just don't like doing things by myself. Um, so I'm starting to think a lot about how I can do a better job of sharing whatever comes to me with other people. Um, I think, I mean, I'm thinking about the sort of company model as it exists, and I'm thinking about how to rework it so it serves more of my collaborators more deeply. Um,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about how the work that we do with performance and with education and with just sort of organizing can be more impactful. And that's kind of where my head's going. And then of course I'm always developing as an artist, blah blah blah. But like I'm kind of thinking a little more pragmatically for the time being.
Love it. Well, we're going to take about a 15-second break, and we'll be right back with 2-minute tap lesson and rapid riffs. See you in 15 seconds. And we are back. Mark Allenly, founder and artistic director of Chicago Tap Theater, back for the second part of our interview with Caleb Teicher. I know all of you that have been following this interview must be loving it, because what a fascinating and inspiring person Caleb is. I think it's really a great, great interview. And here he is. All right. Good to see you.
It's been so long.
I know. Wow, you look different. You don't look any. This is, I think, a lot of people's favorite part. This is the 2-minute tap lessons. Caleb, you have 2 minutes to teach any step, concept, or idea. I'm checking the time. It's funny. I always say I'm checking the time, but let's be honest. If you want to take 20 minutes to teach something, I will not stop you. All right, ready?
Yes. 3,
Go.
2, 1. Okay. The thing I want to talk about is less of a lesson and more of a concept for people who make noise with their bodies when they dance. I want you to think about tap dancers are very clear about how it sounds in their minds, right? And when it sounds in our mind is amazing, right? You know, it sounds like, but in our mind we're like shabba dee dee ba shabba doo ba, and it's like super expressive, right? And it has all this sort of energy around it. It sounds really expressive. I'm going to ask you to actually hear what your dancing sounds like in real life. And the way that I do that is trying to listen for the particular intonation of a room. Every room reverberates, we're about to get a little sciencey here. Every room reverberates the sound of your dancing differently, and your shoe reverberates differently on a different floor, and the floor takes the sound differently. So instead of saying, oh, I know what my tap dancing sounds like, and kind of being preoccupied with how it sounds in your head, take that listening out into the world. So, you know, let's hear what my dancing sounds like when I'm barefoot in this room. Sorry, neighbors. So if you notice, when I dance and I do anything that's a little too dense or too brushy, it doesn't sound good because I'm barefoot and I'm in this weird room. But as soon as I go and I bend my knees and kind of get the bass in the floor, then I can actually hear my room reverberate. You can't hear it because you're over a video, but I can hear the echo of this heel. I actually hear it bouncing off this wall first and then that wall. Anyway. That's my lesson. So
I love it.
Everywhere, tap dancers everywhere, listen to your sounds, and don't be hypercritical, but hear what's actually being heard by other people in real life, in reality, in space and time.
And let that guide you. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right, Caleb, rapid riffs. 10 questions, short answers. Some of these are hard questions. I'm just going to tell you now, these are the same darn 10 questions I've been doing for 11 episodes, and yet people always sound surprised, and they say, oh, that's so hard. And I'm like, well, I send the questions in advance.
I didn't read them, so.
All right.
But I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
Here we go. Number 1, what tap shoes do you like to wear?
Oh, I wear SAF shoes at saf.shoes, S-A-F. They're good.
Ooh. 2, taps, tight or just a little bit loose?
Naturally loose. I don't intentionally loosen, they just become loose.
3, favorite song to tap dance to? And yes, one song. I know, it's impossible.
I don't know. Probably some like jazz head, like How High the Moon or Scrapple from the Apple or Ornithology, some bebop, something, you know.
Beautiful. 4, favorite composer?
Favorite composer? Oh my gosh. Probably Gershwin or something. Actually, I really love Bach. Good stuff for tap dance.
All right. You're in 4/4 time. Do you count in 4s or 8s?
8s.
Interesting. Favorite. We're gonna revisit that.
Please.
Favorite tap dancer to watch who is no longer with us?
Oh gosh. I always love watching Jimmy Slide and Bunny Briggs.
Yeah. Favorite living tap dancer to watch?
Favorite living tap dancer to watch? Uh, my gosh. Diane Walker.
Mm.
The best.
Favorite, yeah. Favorite choreographed tap piece that you have seen or done?
Uh, I really like the piece I made for my company called Buzz. In terms of pieces I've performed, Michelle Dorrance had a piece called Bluegrass, which was super fun to do.
Mm. What single tap performance that you've seen do you remember the most vividly? Like what really left an impression on you?
Uh, probably, probably the first time I saw Dormitius and Ray Edwards dance in real life. It was part of
Nice.
like a tap extravaganza or something like that. It was
Mm.
beautiful.
You can go back in time and see any one tap dancer or tap performance. What do you see?
I would have loved to have been on the set for Bojangles and Jenny Lagan shooting Living in a Great Big Way.
Best venue you've ever played in?
All of them, any of them. But
Ah,
probably we did a show at Lincoln Center outdoors this past summer, and it was like over 3,000 people, and it was free. The show was free, and that's the best thing. Free shows, the best.
yes. Finally, second step of the Shim Sham. Do you start on 4 or 1?
Four. What kind of
Thank
monster
you.
would?
Thank you.
I'm just
Tell
kidding.
me about it,
Kidding.
right? There should be a
You know
law.
what? I think both are cool. I like when they
Yeah.
coexist. But
Yeah.
me personally, four.
I have to tell you, part of what I love about that controversy is that it's a controversy that doesn't really matter much, right? I love that it's something that we can get nerdy about and argue about, but who really cares at the end of the day, right? It's
Man,
great. Certainly Leonard did
I,
it both ways.
I saw Tristan go oh for my comments about counting to 8, and then I saw him go oh for my comments about the first step of the shift show. And I feel like Tristan and I probably need to have a side conversation. So here's actually I'll tell you why I count to 8. Of course,
Yeah,
jazz musicians count to 4,
right.
no question, right? However, when I'm trying to hear tap dance phrases, when I'm trying to hear phrases, dance idea phrases, most of them are longer than a bar.
Very
So
true.
if I count to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, my mind is now hearing 2 separate phrases. But counting to 8, even though it's kind of pedagogically a little less appropriate for a musical dance style, it allows me to hear a longer phrase. Like, the phrase one ba da 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 da. So if I counted to 4,
Yeah.
1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, and then I went 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, then I would hear ba da 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 da, and then ba da 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 da, as opposed to 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, and 8 as the concept. And
Yeah.
that's actually, I mean, there are a number of reasons that it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's right, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
A lot of the phrases that we've come to appreciate in bebop and in big band music are longer phrases. They're 2-bar to 4-bar phrases. So I
Without
count
a doubt.
2 bars at a time.
Love it. I love it. That is
Feel
a
free to
very
fight me.
satisfying
I would
answer.
love to talk about this. Um,
Ah!
and I will support your rationale for counting the 4. But
Yes.
counting 8 works for me.
Well, it's interesting. When my students ask me why other dance forms tend to count to 8, that is the answer I usually give them, that it resides in the phrasing. And that especially for the more, when I imagine ballet movement that can be quite languid and take up a lot of space, counting it, chopping it into this tiny little 1, 2, 3, 4 doesn't feel very satisfying. Like I understand how it would impact your movement choices, and so that is as good of a justification as I have ever heard.
Yeah, I think it's also when I think about the way people teach, if they teach in too short of a phrase, it's hard for me to pick it up. If someone goes
Yeah.
shuffle heel, toe toe, step heel. I'm like, what is going on? Like, just show me at least 4 or 8 counts at a time. It's so, if you chop it up too much, it's actually harder. It's sort of like someone like teaching you how to say a word and they go like extra, and then you're like, what is the word? It's really difficult. It's really difficult for me. But,
Excellent. So before I ask the final question, I have a little housekeeping to do. I want to thank Leah Koch, our marketing director and tech guru. She makes all this stuff happen. It is her birthday today. Happy birthday, Leah. I hope you are enjoying your day off. Don't even think of doing any work today. I want to thank our staff, Molly, Allie, Sarah, our amazing interns, Emily and Allie, and I want to thank the set dresser, producer, and business manager of Chicago Tap Theater, my beautiful wife, Jennifer Yonley, and dear friend. She wanted to make sure that I passed on her love to you. I want to announce our next guest. Please join us on Sunday. I will be interviewing Heather Cornell on the Tea on Tap, and we have a big announcement we have been holding on to, so I'm super excited for that. And Friday, tomorrow is our final week with Asia Gray for book club. We've been reading The Soles of Your Feet. Asia will be there again to talk about it. We will be announcing tomorrow the next book and author that will be joining us. And man, am I excited. I can't wait. So everybody out there, please join us for book club. As always, we have classes every Wednesday. Please come take from us if you get a chance. I want to thank all of you for joining us. It's a nice big audience today. Thank you all for being here. Caleb, before I thank you, I have to ask you the final question.
uh-oh.
It is the final shuffle. I need like music for the final shuffle. When you shuffle off this mortal coil, how do you most want to be remembered as a tap artist?
Oh my gosh. That's heavy. I probably won't be remembered, and that's okay. But maybe the world's a little, maybe the world's a little bit better because of something I did.
Caleb, I guarantee you, you'll
just a more fair, a more diverse and meaningful world for more people. That's kind of my preoccupation.
Beautiful. Well, I think that without a doubt, you will be remembered that way. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Caleb, it's always such a pleasure for me when I get to do these interviews, not only with people that I respect and admire, but also people that I love. So thank you for being a dear friend. Thanks for being such a great colleague. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I will see you on Sunday for the Tea on Tap. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.